Hi, everybody. This is Mike, and today we're going to cover the March position report. This is the 8th position report of the 2024 crop year. We're going to just kind of glance through this really quickly, and then we're going to cut over to a special guest that we've brought on to talk about tariffs and their involvement in kind of dialoguing with the EU about almonds specifically. So really quickly, the March position report, shipments were about 221 million pounds. That was within or slightly above industry expectations. Year-to-date shipments are about 1.5% down compared to the same time period last year. Maybe more notable, it would be the sales that were made in the month of March. The industry sold about 217 million pounds compared to about 181 million pounds March of 24. So a pretty good increase in sales. February, so last month, also was a very good sales month for the almond industry. And this is all in the backdrop of kind of increasing prices. So I think that's all very encouraging. An additional point that we've been analyzing a little bit further here is really the commitments. So if you look at the first page, the commitments basically would look like they're flat. But if you take a little bit longer time horizon and you start looking at a 4-year average, the industry is about 20% behind where they should be compared to a 4-year average for the month of March. So that's really indicative of really, I think, where the buyers are in relation to where they historically would be for this time period. Again, this is in a scenario wherein up to this point in time, almonds have been the best value for money in the tree nut category. So a little feedback from European manufacturers and US manufacturers is that they have really been using more almonds because it has been the best value for money in this crop season. So we think there is still quite a bit of buying to be done, and California really sits in a really sound fundamental position. So for the next portion of this conversation, I've brought on Ellie Osman. Ellie, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for having me, Mike.
So a little background on Ellie. Ellie's been in the almond business for 20 plus years, really starting out as a European importer. And over the last 10 years, Ellie, your business has really morphed pretty dramatically. I mean, could you kind of explain kind of where you've come from and kind of where you are today as Minerva?
Yeah, of course. I started in the industry back in 1998, so quite some time back now, and I'm very much have remained in the industry. I think it shows how dynamic it is and how much it can change. Today, we're exporting almonds all over the world, very much focusing on Europe, India, China and Middle East. So really trying to understand buyers' needs and really working with them in country and wherever possible, those physically using the goods.
Ellie, you've also been very involved in the UK and maybe even more importantly on the EU stage when it's come to talks about tariffs and more specifically about the tariffs associated with California almonds. Can you give us a little bit of maybe what your involvement has been to date?
Yeah, absolutely. So in addition to being the chair of the Nuts and Dry Fruit Trade Association in the UK, I'm also vice president of the FRUCOM. So FRUCOM effectively is a body of national associations based in Brussels. And FRUCOM's main responsibility is to be a voice of those trade associations and a voice for with policymakers, with European officials, raising any issues and concerns they have. FRUCOM has a small, exceptionally experienced team in Brussels, led by Anna and Lebo, who have done a fabulous job in really bringing to fore concerns over some of the potential US EU retaliation measures. Most importantly, those retaliation measures that the EU's been looking to impose.
And so at starting at the beginning on the kind of tariff talks, it really kind of started with steel and aluminum. And then could you maybe take us from those dialogues to kind of where we sit today in regards to almonds in the EU kind of retaliation?
So I think the most important thing is we start really, as you mentioned, with at the beginning and really reflect back to 2018 with discussions and certainly the imposing of tariffs with by the EU on US products, particularly two US products pertinent to our industry, being peanut paste and dried cranberries. So effectively, there were retaliation tariffs in place of 25% on those products that were paused under the Biden administration. On the 12th of March, when President Trump decided to resume still in the aluminium tariffs on EU imports into the US, the EU decided to lapse that pause on those tariffs and to actually look to consider other further countermeasures, of which almonds, unfortunately, was number 2 on the list. There was a period of consultation. There were 2 very important meetings, one with the Department General of Trade and one with the Department of Agri-Trade, which Frucom really took a very active role in, and really discussing with stakeholders, making sure everyone was very much aligned and in the same position, that effectively they opposed the implementation of these tariffs by the EU. It should be mentioned they are raw material almonds, so they are effectively shelled almonds on which the EU is looking to impose tariffs. And that really was the focus actually of the main objection by EU member states.
Right. Because basically bringing in raw material almonds creates economic value locally within Europe, right?
Absolutely.
That's kind of the argument that Frucom's taking is, look, don't tariff this raw ingredient. You're going to affect some value that's generated locally.
Precisely. And actually the value is estimated at potentially €1 billion. So the value creation within those EU member states, which is, as you mentioned, roasted, blanched, sliced, all that value is therefore created there. And actually, if you consider the number of jobs, direct jobs involved, but potentially those indirect, for example, service providers, for example, logistics, hauliers, customs clearance agents, the potential damaging effect of implementing those tariffs could be really quite dramatic. And I think, obviously California is about 78% of world supply, but in Europe, for European buyers, it effectively is about 90% of what they purchase. So very significant supply source. So I think one other point to mention was during the course of a particular meeting with the Department General of Trade, they did mention one of the other reasons that they chose Californian almonds to be on the list, and that was namely their belief and understanding that there was an alternative supply, being Spanish almonds. So that was a point that was addressed and very much considered and taken off the table by European member states. Effectively, the varieties that Spain grows and the 4 main varieties and simply do not have multi-purpose use. So they cannot be easily substituted and interchanged. So that was a very interesting point and an important one that was considered.
And basically, California produces 75 to 80% of the global supply. So there's really kind of no outs if basically these tariffs are put on of 25%. So can you just bring us up to date really quick about kind of where we're at now?
Absolutely. So effectively, it was decided and voted on Wednesday by 26 of the 27 member states to agree the countermeasures that the EU would impose. So for Californian almonds, that would mean that a duty of an additional tariff of 25% will be added as of the 1st of December. It was not actually ascertained just as yet until the official documentation is produced at what stage the 1st of December would take place, whether that's on import, in transit or export. We believe it's on import on the 1st of December.
So that's probably going to have some effect on kind of what's going to happen between now and then, right? You kind of got a little bit of a squeeze that's going to maybe potentially develop if these things all stay the same.
Absolutely. And I think we've seen since October last year of a very steady European market with consistent interest to cover themselves on a really effectively a hand-to-mouth basis.
It's kind of what we're talking about with these commitments. Essentially, there's a lot more still to buy. And 24 crop fundamentals are basically nailed down. The crop, we know what we're doing, we know where we're at, right? So, and as of the last few days, we've seen a pretty tremendous increase in demand. So I think all of those things are really positive. But Ellie, I just want to say thank you very much for everything that you have done. Not just for us, but also for voicing the opinion kind of to the EU. I think so far what we've gotten is probably better than the alternative. So again, thank you very much, Ellie. Really appreciate it.
You're most welcome. You're most welcome, Mike. And I think thanks needs to go to the team at Frucom, particularly Anna and Lebo, have done some fantastic work in ensuring voices are very much heard.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Well, everybody, thank you very much. This has been a recap of the March position report, as well as kind of where California almonds fall within EU tariffs. As the market develops going forward, we'll continue to keep you updated. Thank you.